The crisis in the Strait of Hormuz has been inextricably convoluted with the US, Israel, and the entire Middle East all caught in the web. Some are speculating that a deal may not be reached anytime soon, and this has raised the question of whether the strait can be bypassed entirely to revive the volume and frequency of global energy supply chain activities. In this video, we take a dive at answering this question. Let's start with a background. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most important energy choke point. At just 33 kilometers wide, it carries around 20 million barrels of oil per day, a quarter of all seaborne oil, and more than 110 BCM of LNG, nearly 20% of global LNG trade, mostly from Qatar. With so much oil and gas squeezed through one narrow passage, even a small disruption can shake the entire global energy system. The theoretical vulnerability of this choke point materialized into a severe economic shock following the military conflict involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. A de facto closure of the strait since early March has effectively halted standard maritime shipping lanes. Daily tanker transits plunged from a 2026 baseline average of nearly 20 vessels per day down to a mere trickle of 1 to 3 ships. This sudden supply contraction caused an immediate, severe market reaction. Brent crude prices surged, and global merchandise trade projections for the year slowed dramatically from an initial 4.7% down to a stagnant 1.5 to 2.5%. With multiple back and forth in arriving at a diplomatic resolution, global energy markets and sovereign states are no longer patient. Gulf oil producers, in particular, are initiating a permanent structural shift in energy logistics as the war has shrunk oil production, fostered destruction of critical infrastructures, and brewed exits from regional and global blocs like OPEC. Oil-producing Gulf nations are aggressively investing billions of dollars to fast-track overland infrastructure designed to bypass the water choke point entirely. The Gulf states are now racing to build permanent alternatives to the Strait of Hormuz. In the UAE, Abu Dhabi is scaling up its Habshan-Fujairah pipeline, which already moves 1.5 to 1.8 million barrels per day straight to the Gulf of Oman. A parallel line and expanded Fujairah infrastructure will double capacity to 3.6 million barrels per day by mid-2027. Saudi Arabia is leaning on its massive 1,200-kilometer east-west petroline, able to ship 7 million barrels per day to the Red Sea. Early engineering work is underway to lift that to 9 million barrels per day, giving Saudi Arabia one of the world's largest bypass routes. Highly exposed to Hormuz disruptions, Iraq is building the Basra-Haditha pipeline to redirect flows toward Jordan, Syria, and Turkey. It's also restoring the Kirkuk-Ceyhan line, aiming to push 1.2 million barrels per day directly to the Mediterranean. The big debate is the feasibility of dumping the route, given the earlier backdrop provided. Why is a complete possible? From a purely quantitative engineering perspective, creating an alternative network is achievable over a multi-year horizon. The cumulative theoretical capacity of existing and planned overland pipelines across the Arabian Peninsula exceeds 12 million barrels per day. If Saudi Arabia reaches its 9 million barrels per day target and the UAE secures its 3.6 million barrels per day capacity, more than half of the historical Persian Gulf seaborne crude volume can bypass the strait entirely. Furthermore, structural logistics are expanding beyond pipelines. Projects like the 1,500-kilometer Saudi land bridge rail corridor aim to transport containerized freight from the Arabian Gulf directly to the Red Sea in under 10 hours. This project bypasses maritime transit risks for non-energy trade. Combined with alternative coastal loading hubs outside the Persian Gulf, such as Fujairah and Yanbu, these networks could eventually marginalize Iran's geographic leverage over international shipping. Conversely, empirical data shows that completely eliminating reliance on the Strait of Hormuz is functionally impossible under current global infrastructure constraints. Alternative export networks are operating near maximum capacity, yet they currently divert only about 4 million barrels per day, leaving roughly 80% of historical Hormuz oil volumes entirely exposed to the blockade. More importantly, there are zero viable alternative routes for LNG. Unlike crude oil, which can be pumped through overland pipes, the specialized refrigeration and super chilled logistics required for LNG rely entirely on large maritime vessel carriers. Major producers like Qatar, which routes over 93% of its LNG through the strait, possess no pipeline alternatives to deliver these massive volumes to global markets. Geopolitical risk is also not eliminated by moving overland. It is merely redistributed. Pipelines terminating at the Red Sea must still route oil through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to reach Asian markets, exposing vessels to asymmetric drone and missile attacks launched from coastal East Africa and Yemen. Overland infrastructure remains static, making it vulnerable to low-cost, targeted sabotage. With all of this said, the global energy architecture is undergoing a forced transformation. While the 2026 crisis has accelerated pipeline expansions and alternative port developments, empirical realities confirm that the Strait of Hormuz cannot be entirely abandoned. Pipelines can offset crude oil supply shocks, but the global economy's absolute dependence on fixed LNG corridors and the inherent vulnerability of alternative maritime choke points mean that the Persian Gulf's narrow gateway remains a permanent pillar of international economic stability. And with the delay in arriving at a truce, the global oil market shock may be an event we all have to live with for a while. Our base case scenario is one where a bargained tolling fee is arrived at, and shipping movements can be restored. But that would mean a permanently elevated base price for crude. If you like this content, subscribe